My hands trembled as I watched the security footage, the grainy black and white images a chilling replay of my worst fears. My car, parked innocently in my own driveway, was being systematically ransacked under the cloak of darkness. I had always felt safe in Willow Creek, a quiet, suburban haven, but that night the illusion shattered. Little did I know, this violation would set off a chain reaction, leading to a showdown with the neighborhood's self-proclaimed queen, a battle over something as seemingly innocuous as light, and an unexpected twist that would expose everything on local news. Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button to make my day and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. The metallic tang of fear still lingered in my mouth, days after the car break-in. I was Marcus Nguyen, 33 years old, and until that recent unsettling incident, my biggest worry had been remembering to take out the recycling on Tuesdays. Willow Creek was supposed to be a sanctuary, a picture-perfect neighborhood with manicured lawns and friendly waves, a place where the biggest drama usually involved a misplaced garden gnome or an overdue book from the community library. My modest two-story home, a beacon of peace after long days as a software engineer, felt utterly violated. The police had been sympathetic, but ultimately, they offered little solace beyond a case number and a recommendation for better security. That recommendation echoed in my mind, a persistent whisper urging me to take action, to reclaim the sense of safety that had been so abruptly snatched away. My mind, accustomed to problem-solving complex algorithms, immediately turned to practical solutions. The darkness, I reasoned, was an accomplice to the crime. It had provided cover, allowing the perpetrator to operate with impunity. The answer then was simple: light. Bright, intrusive, fear-inducing light. I spent hours researching, poring over reviews, and comparing specifications. I settled on a set of state-of-the-art motion sensor lights, strategically designed to blanket my driveway and front porch in an instant burst of illumination the moment anything or anyone moved within their impressive range. They were sleek, modern, and promised to be a formidable deterrent. The package arrived 2 days later, and with a determined resolve, I set about installing them, meticulously angling each one to maximize coverage and eliminate any shadowy nooks. The satisfaction of seeing them snap to life, flooding the night with a brilliant, reassuring glow, was immediate and immense. I finally felt a small measure of control returning, a sense of having erected a new, unbreachable barrier against the encroaching darkness. My peace, however, was short-lived. It arrived, ironically, with the morning mail, not in a package, but in the form of a crisply folded letter, its pristine white envelope bearing the unmistakable logo of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association, or TOW. HOA. My heart sank slightly. The HOA, particularly its vice president, Karen Ellis, was a known entity in Willow Creek, a force to be reckoned with, a woman who wielded the rulebook like a weapon and saw herself as the ultimate arbiter of neighborhood, aesthetics, and decorum. Karen Ellis was, to put it mildly, a busybody of epic proportions, a woman in her early 60s whose perfectly coiffed blonde hair seemed to mirror her rigidly controlled life. Her house, directly across the street from mine, was a testament to her meticulous nature, every shrub trimmed to perfection, every lawn blade standing at attention. Her presence on the HOA board wasn't just a volunteer position for her, it was a crusade. I opened the letter with a sense of foreboding. It was, predictably, a citation. My new motion sensor lights, it declared in stark official language, were in direct violation of Section 4, subsection B, paragraph 3 of the HOA covenants. Excessive external lighting, commonly referred to as light pollution, which demonstrably infringes upon the reasonable enjoyment of neighboring properties, is strictly prohibited. Karen, in her capacity as vice president, had signed it herself, her elegant cursive a stark contrast to the officious tone. The letter demanded the immediate removal of the offending lights and warned of escalating fines should I fail to comply. My initial wave of exasperation quickly morphed into a simmering indignation. My sense of safety, my proactive measure against crime, was being dismissed as mere light pollution. It felt like a personal affront, a direct attack on my right to feel secure in my own home. I read the citation again, my jaw tightening with each word. Light pollution? Really? My lights were functional, a necessary security measure, not some gaudy Christmas display left up in July. The audacity of it, to prioritize a subjective aesthetic over actual safety. I considered my options. I could, of course, simply remove the lights. It would be the path of least resistance, a quick capitulation to the HOA's arbitrary rules. But something inside me bristled at the thought. This wasn't just about lights anymore, it was about principle. It was about my right to protect my property, my peace of mind. I decided then and there that I wouldn't back down. This wasn't just about the money I'd spent, nor the effort I'd put into installation. This was about standing my ground against an unreasonable demand. The next morning, armed with a carefully drafted email, I fired off my response to the HOA, copying Karen directly. I cited the recent car break-in, emphasizing the urgent need for enhanced security. I pointed out that my lights were motion-activated, meaning they were only on when triggered, hardly a constant source of illumination. I even included a few statistics on the effectiveness of motion lights in deterring crime, hoping to appeal to some shred of logic or concern for community welfare. My email ended with a firm but polite refusal to remove the lights, stating my intent to appeal the citation. I felt a surge of defiant satisfaction after hitting send. The ball was now in their court, or more accurately, in Karen's court. Her response was swift, almost instantaneous, a testament to her ever-vigilant watch over the neighborhood. A phone call, not an email, which was unusual for official HOA business. Her voice, when I answered, was clipped, authoritative, and entirely devoid of empathy. "Marcus, I received your email," she stated, her tone cold enough to frost over my phone screen. "Your personal security concerns, while noted, do not supersede the established covenants of this association. The lights are a nuisance. They flash on when I'm simply walking my dog. They disturb the aesthetic uniformity of Willow Creek. They must come down." Her words were delivered with an air of unassailable righteousness, as if her personal inconvenience outweighed any legitimate safety concern. I tried to explain again, to reason with her, to emphasize the recent crime. "Karen, my car was broken into. I need these lights for my family's safety. They're a deterrent. Don't you understand that?" "I understand that rules are rules, Marcus," she retorted, her voice rising in pitch, a clear sign of her growing irritation. "We all live under the same covenants. If everyone started installing unsightly blinking lights, this neighborhood would resemble a discotheque. We pride ourselves on maintaining a certain standard here. Your lights are disruptive. You have until the end of the week to remove them, or the fines will begin." She didn't wait for my response, simply hung up, leaving me holding a dead phone and a growing sense of exasperation. The conversation, if one could even call it that, had reinforced my resolve. She wasn't interested in understanding, only in enforcing her version of order. A week passed, then another, marked by a series of increasingly aggressive notices from the HOA, each one accompanied by a new, escalating fine. The initial $50 penalty quickly jumped to $100, then $200. I meticulously filed each notice, my burgeoning stack of official-looking papers a testament to Karen's unwavering determination. My refusal to comply, meanwhile, earned me the occasional frosty glare from Karen as she walked her poodle, Princess, past my house. I returned her glare with a polite but firm nod, refusing to be intimidated. My lights, defiantly, remained in place, illuminating my driveway whenever a leaf blew across it or a cat darted through the bushes. They were a beacon of rebellion in the otherwise placid landscape of Willow Creek. The tension between us was palpable, a silent battle waged across manicured lawns. Other neighbors, sensing the friction, would occasionally offer a sympathetic glance or a hushed word of encouragement, but no one dared to openly challenge Karen. She was, after all, the HOA vice president, and her influence within the community was considerable. I understood their reluctance. Most people simply wanted to live their lives in peace, free from HOA disputes and the inevitable drama that followed in Karen's wake. But I wasn't most people. I was a software engineer, a problem solver, and a man who believed in standing up for what was right, even if it meant a prolonged, frustrating battle with the neighborhood's self-appointed dictator. Then came the unexpected turn. It was a Tuesday evening, a little over a week after the last fine notice had landed in my mailbox. I was sitting in my living room, coding, the soft glow of my monitor illuminating the room, when my phone buzzed with a notification from my security camera app. Motion detected on Karen Ellis's porch. My first thought was a fleeting, cynical one, perhaps Karen herself, walking to check her mail, triggering the sensor. But then, as I watched the live feed on my phone, my cynicism morphed into bewildered disbelief, then a strange, almost macabre fascination. The footage was clear, thanks to the ample illumination provided by my own motion sensor lights, which, it turned out, reached surprisingly far across the street. A figure, cloaked in dark clothing, darted onto Karen's porch, scooped up a package left by a delivery service, and vanished into the night as quickly as they had appeared. It was a classic porch pirate, a crime that had become increasingly common in recent years. My initial reaction was a complicated mix of schadenfreude and genuine concern. While Karen and I were at odds, I wouldn't wish a home invasion on anyone. Yet, the irony was too potent to ignore. Her porch, once shrouded in the darkness she so staunchly defended, had become a prime target, and the very lights she had condemned had provided the crystal-clear evidence of the crime. I immediately saved the footage, a gut feeling telling me this was going to be significant. The next morning, I saw Karen outside her house, pacing frantically on her porch, talking animatedly on her phone. She looked distraught, her usual composure completely shattered. The missing package was clearly the cause. I considered walking over, offering my condolences, perhaps even mentioning the footage, but something held me back. I wanted her to come to me. I wanted her to realize, on her own, the folly of her arbitrary rules. Later that day, the local news station, Channel 7, put out a bulletin reporting a recent surge in package thefts in suburban areas. They were asking for residents to submit any relevant security footage. An idea, bold and perhaps a little mischievous, sparked in my mind. This was it. This was the moment to not just defend myself, but to turn the tables, to let the wider community, and more importantly, the HOA, see the undeniable truth. I carefully edited the footage, creating a short, concise clip that clearly showed the thief, the package, and the surrounding area, illuminated by my light pollution. I added a small, tasteful timestamp in the corner and submitted it to Channel 7, along with a brief, factual description of the incident and the relevant backstory about my HOA dispute. I didn't include any overtly inflammatory language, letting the footage speak for itself. The stage was set. The local news segment aired that evening, and I watched, captivated, as my quiet suburban street became the unlikely backdrop for a public spectacle. The reporter, with a somber tone, described the rise in porch thefts, then introduced my footage. The clip played crisp and undeniable, showing the shadowy figure snatching Karen's package. The reporter then explained, with a slight smirk, the ongoing dispute between me and the HOA, specifically highlighting Karen Ellis's role in demanding the removal of my motion lights due to light pollution. They even included a brief soundbite from the original HOA citation, its language sounding utterly ridiculous in the context of a real crime. The irony was palpable, practically dripping from the screen. The segment went viral, at least within the confines of our relatively small community. My phone began to buzz incessantly. Neighbors called, some apologetic, some congratulatory, all expressing a shared sense of vindication. Social media exploded with comments, a digital outpouring of outrage directed squarely at the HOA and, by extension, Karen Ellis. HOA Quran became a trending hashtag, a symbol of bureaucratic overreach and tone-deaf authority. People shared anecdotes of their own battles with overzealous HOAs, and the collective frustration, long simmering beneath the surface, finally boiled over. The public backlash was swift and brutal. The next morning, the atmosphere in Willow Creek was electric. Whispers turned into open discussions, the previous reluctance to challenge Karen replaced by a newfound courage fueled by public opinion. People pointed to my lights, no longer just a source of light pollution, but a shining example of proactive safety. My mailbox, instead of HOA citations, was filled with letters of support, even a few small gifts from sympathetic neighbors. The contrast was stark, a clear shift in the neighborhood's perception of the unfolding drama. Karen, on the other hand, was conspicuously absent from her morning dog walk. Her perfectly manicured lawn seemed to shrink under the weight of public scrutiny. The news segment had not only exposed her vulnerability to crime, but had also publicly shamed her for her rigid adherence to rules over common sense. The light pollution argument, once a formidable weapon in her arsenal, now sounded utterly ludicrous, a testament to her misplaced priorities. The backlash wasn't just confined to social media. It was spilling over into real-world conversations, at the grocery store, at the community park, everywhere. The inevitable phone call came late that afternoon, not from Karen, but from Mr. Henderson, the HOA president, a usually timid man who always seemed to defer to Karen's strong will. His voice, typically measured and calm, was strained, bordering on panicked. "Marcus, we need to talk," he stammered, his usual formality replaced by an unusual urgency. "Immediately. Can you come to the community center in 20 minutes? It's urgent." I agreed, a small smirk playing on my lips. The wind, it seemed, had finally shifted. I arrived at the community center to find not just Mr. Henderson, but the entire HOA board, including a visibly disheveled Karen Ellis, her perfect hair slightly askew, her face pale and drawn. The usual air of self-importance that permeated their meetings was replaced by a palpable sense of anxiety and desperation. They looked like a group of children caught with their hands in the cookie jar, stripped of their authority and exposed to the harsh glare of public opinion. Mr. Henderson, clearing his throat nervously, began the meeting. "Marcus, we understand your position now. The board has held an emergency meeting. We've reviewed the footage from Channel 7, and well, we've heard the community's concerns." His gaze flickered towards Karen, who refused to meet my eyes, staring fixedly at the polished table. He continued, his voice regaining some semblance of its usual composure, though still tinged with an underlying tremor. "Effective immediately, the HOA is rescinding the citation regarding your motion sensor lights. We acknowledge the legitimate need for such security measures, especially in light of recent events." He paused, took a deep breath, and delivered the coup de grace. "Furthermore, the board has voted unanimously to reimburse you for all fines incurred." I felt a surge of triumph, a quiet, internal cheer. It wasn't just about the money, though recouping $200 was certainly welcome. It was about the principle, the vindication. It was about proving that common sense, and the safety of the community, should always take precedence over arbitrary rules and personal vendettas. Karen finally spoke, her voice thin and raspy, devoid of its usual authority. I was mistaken, Marcus. My apologies. I was focused on the aesthetic and overlooked the greater implications. I should have considered the safety aspect more thoroughly. Her apology, while delivered through gritted teeth, was an acknowledgment of defeat, a concession forced by the undeniable weight of public scrutiny. It was not a genuine expression of remorse, but a pragmatic surrender. I simply nodded, accepting her apology without gloating. There was no need to rub it in. The outcome, the public humiliation, was punishment enough. The HOA, in a desperate attempt to salvage its tarnished reputation, didn't stop there. They issued a public apology, not just to me, but to the entire community, acknowledging their oversight and promising to review all existing covenants with a focus on safety and common sense. They even went so far as to issue a press release, highlighting their newfound commitment to resident well-being and announcing a new HOA-sponsored initiative to encourage security improvements throughout the neighborhood, including, ironically, subsidies for motion sensor lights. My lights, once deemed light pollution, were now a model for community safety. The story, of course, became local legend. I was no longer just Marcus Nguyen, the software engineer. I was the guy who took on HOA Karen and won, a local hero in the fight against bureaucratic overreach. Neighbors stopped me on the street, not to whisper about Karen, but to thank me, to share their own frustrating HOA stories, and to ask for advice on installing their own motion lights. My previously quiet life had been irrevocably altered, transformed by a series of events sparked by a simple car break-in and amplified by the power of community and local news. As for Karen Alice, she remained on the HOA board, though her influence was significantly diminished. She was quieter in meetings, her once assertive voice replaced by a more subdued, almost hesitant tone. Her lawn remained impeccably manicured, but her aura of unassailable authority had vanished, replaced by a quiet humility forced upon her by public opinion. She still walked princess, but she no longer met my gaze with frosty glares. Instead, she offered a small, almost imperceptible nod, a silent acknowledgement of our shared history, of the battle fought and ultimately won. My motion lights, once a source of contention, now stood proudly, illuminating my driveway, a silent testament to vigilance, common sense, and the unexpected power of a single individual to challenge authority and spark change within a community. And every time they snapped on, bathing my porch in a reassuring glow, I felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that the darkness, both literal and metaphorical, had been pushed back, and that my home and my community were a little bit safer for it. The incident, though initially frustrating and unsettling, had ultimately become a beacon, not just of light, but of the unexpected ways in which small acts of defiance can illuminate larger truths and bring about meaningful change.